Okay, so it was the trade deadline 2016 the other day. Not the most memorable one ever. But let's start at the top. Phil, I'm going to throw this to you. What was the worst kind of head scratching trade you saw pass?
Oof, head scratching trade. There was a couple funny ones there. You know what? I'm not sure how I want to view the Clippers Grizzlies one because there's part of me that sees why they both did it, and part of me that kind of gets puzzled by the same thing. It's like why is everyone so in love with Jeff Green when you need to make that push, and then it never really turns into what you want. He's that guy who always gets pushed to different situations. Like, oh, he's the 6'9" savior who can stretch the floor and this, and he never ends up really being that. But I will say the one that scratched my head the most maybe is Tobias Harris going for what looked later on like a steal of a deal when other guys were pulling first round picks and they were getting maybe rentals. I mean, we saw Ilyasova and Jennings both playing very well for Orlando, but I don't know if they're part of their future. So you're giving up a guy who's locked into a contract. That one was a bit more of a head scratcher to me.
Yeah, the Harris deal wasn't great. I guess they were creating space for Aaron Gordon and some of their other prospects, and to make a major run in free agency this summer. But I do agree. I think they could have got more for Harris. I'm not one of the people that thinks the Jeff Green trade was a good one. Jeff Green's basically been below average most of his career. I do give Green a lot of credit coming back from heart surgery to make it back into the NBA. That's really impressive to me. But the Grizzlies adding another volatile personality to that locker room in Lance Stephenson, when you already have Zach Randolph, you have PJ Hairston, you have Matt Barnes, you have
Well, I
Tony
think that's
Allen.
okay because I heard a rumor from Chris Broussard from one of his sources that they're actually moving to the WWE, and they're now going to be taking up professional wrestling instead of basketball there in Memphis.
The best nickname that I heard from Memphis was Grizz Theft Auto. And I think while this group is together, they're the modern day Jailblazers.
Yeah.
So it'll be
Oh,
interesting to
nice.
see how that works out. It's a little bit questionable, but giving up a first round pick just doesn't seem smart to me, especially when the Grizzlies are in a position that as soon as they miss the playoffs, their first round pick goes to the Denver Nuggets, at least for the next 3 years. So you're giving up another first-round pick in addition to that. You're losing the opportunity to kind of get some young talent in there. It's baffling to me. It really, really is baffling to me.
But maybe Lance Stevenson rejuvenates his career. I mean, they're going to need points, right? Maybe,
Mhm.
maybe, probably not.
Yeah.
Phil, was there one trade that was really sneaky good that really stood out to you?
I mean, I'm not trying to be too much of a homer for Justin's Cavs here, but the Channing Frye, I mean, their ability to stretch at that, can play the 4 and the 5 position, I think is going to give them some sneaky looks. But I actually really liked the Houston-Detroit deal. I liked the first round pick in Joel Anthony for Montehunis and Thornton. I think that made sense. Montehunis coming back from a back injury, but I think he's the kind of guy in Stan Van Gundy's system. If they're able to re-sign him on some kind of a decent deal, because he will be a free agent, I think that could be a really nice pairing. I don't know what they're totally planning to do there with Markieff Morris and Harris and him. Maybe just strengthen numbers. I think Thornton will add some offensive punch off the bench, which they were going to be missing once they lost Brandon Jennings in that trade, because they were actually able to bring in some scoring that way. I think Detroit ran away with this one, but it's all going to kind of depend if they can sign. If they can't sign Montehunis and they give up a first round, especially for Montehunis being injured right now, I think it's a wait and see, but I think that has the possibility of being one of my favorites.
hmm Yeah, I think Detroit had one of the better deadlines. I think in terms of deals that have any consequence, you have to look at which teams are contenders and what did they do. I don't consider the Clippers a contender, so giving up a first round pick for Jeff Green, whatever, that's Doc Rivers doing what Doc Rivers does, which is insignificant moves. Cleveland, Channing Frye, it is an upgrade. I think it's going to help them with spacing. It's going to help them a lot against the Eastern Conference. I think there's a lot of unique looks they can do there. As an upgrade, it saved money, but I don't think it really moves the needle against Golden State. Oklahoma adding Randy Foye, I think, is a huge move. Foye's a very intelligent player, plays defense, a good shooter, can create his own shot. The Thunder really have been craving a shooting guard that can do some of that stuff, and I think that's a move that if he gels with the team over the rest of the regular season, that could pay major dividends in the playoffs. I really think he's what they are kind of hoping they could get out of Dion Waiters, and he's been looking to be in a good situation for a long time, and I wouldn't be surprised to see him excel.
Phil, who won the trade deadline?
I'm still going to say Detroit just because I think the Harris trade almost gave them the win out of the gate, and I really like Montehunis and such, and I think Stan Van Gundy finally has put his mark. You know, he was given this team with a couple nice pieces, but a lot of guys he wasn't so sure with, so he's kind of cleared the decks in a lot of ways, allowed playing times for the guys he wants, and it's a young team. I mean, Montehunis at 25 is their oldest relevant player, really, and aside from that, I mean, look, there's some teams that didn't make trades. I mean, Justin could speak to this better than I could, but maybe one of Cleveland's best trades was not trading Kevin Love. They got Frye and they'll get some stuff for that. But there were some rumors maybe they'd be trading Shumpert, maybe this. But on a team with so many personalities, maybe kind of like how people were saying how DeAndre Jordan coming back after all that actually caused them to fuse a bit better. Maybe that's the same thing with Love. Like maybe him feeling like he's not being shipped out or not part of that core and being, saying we're sticking with you and going forward, actually kind of jumped up Cleveland on my boards. I mean, I still think they're in that, and I know most people argue with me as that 3-4 mark, depending how you view OKC, especially with Foye now. I think the cream of the crop is still, the Spurs and the Golden State Warriors, but I think Cleveland did well to kind of trust in their own talent.
Mm-hmm.
Justin, who won it?
I'm going to echo a lot of what Phil said. I think Detroit came away with the most this deadline. I think they did the most to improve their team. It remains to be seen how everything works. Tobias Harris isn't exactly a knockdown three-point shooter, not a good defensive player, but he has a lot of talent and is 23 years old. For what they spent, I think it was a great pickup. Montehunis was a very intelligent trade as well. Getting Thornton's, I think Thornton's a player that will excel in Stan Van Gundy's system. So I'd say Detroit's probably the biggest winner. Washington probably took the biggest risk, trading for Markieff Morris, probably the most talented player that was traded at the deadline, but they did give up a first-round pick that's only top 9 protected, so if they miss playoffs, and they got a bit of a hole to dig out of, if they miss playoffs, they don't get that first-round pick, and maybe he benefits from a change of scenery. They feel they did their research there, but that could be a really significant move if it does work out. So that's probably the highest risk-reward move of the deadline. But in terms of what was added, I'll agree with Phil that Detroit added the most of the deadline.
Although I will add in that I think Charlotte did actually all right with Courtney Lee. I think that was a nice little pickup as well, especially with Kid Gilchrist going out with that injury, assuring that kind of perimeter protection, him and Batum at the 2 and 3. I think that's going to be something that, as they're looking to enter the playoffs, is like he's been an underrated player.
Yeah, that's going to keep them in the playoff position, I think. I think that's going to be enough. I believe they're in 7th right now. I think adding Courtney Lee is the insurance they needed. Shooting that they've really been kind of craving in Charlotte, 3-and-D player. I think I was surprised that a contender didn't make a big pitch for him, but Memphis did get a fairly big
I
return
was
for him.
shocked that the Thunder didn't make a hard play for him because he seemed like the exact player that they needed on that run. Like I like Foy, but I would have loved Courtney Lee.
Oh yeah. Courtney Lee would have been a much better addition, but I guess they didn't have the assets to really get that to happen. But Foy's definitely a good backup plan there.
Yeah, for sure. Are we frozen with Mark? All right. But we'll wait for him to rejoin that. I'm just trying to think of any of the other little sneaky trades that kind of came through there that was like, were there any that like super surprised you out there that like just came in and you're like, really? They made this trade? Like aside from the Clippers one, which we spoke about. Like, was there one that kind of came out and you're just like, why bother?
Not really. The Clippers one was the only one that I was really just kind of laughing at. Some of the rumors out there were probably the only head scratchers that I saw. Like the fact that Sacramento was offering Kufos, Ben McElmore, and a sweetener, presumably Marco Bellinelli, for Pau Gasol. And it was Chicago that turned it down. That made me scratch my head.
Chicago said no to that?
Chicago was the one turning that down.
I really like McLemore there next to Jimmy Butler as a 2-3.
Pau Gasol, like, Chicago needs to rebuild. I think adding that would have been
huge. And Kufis next to Bobby Portis is kind of nice as well, right?
Agreed.